dedicated to God, obeying God's laws, and flourishing in God's image. But they did not flourish, and God did not bless them. Indeed, within a few months, roughly a quarter of the entire population had died or was dying. Starvation threatened the rest. Many were fleeing back to England, and nearly all wondered if they had done right. Anticipating that winter would utterly exhaust their resources, Winthrop had, months earlier, charged Pierce with resupplying the plantation. Pierce's return brought more than food, supplies, or even hope. He brought deliverance, and, seemingly, a sign that the settlers had done right in leaving England. A sign that God had used the hard times merely to test the settlers' resolve. As the Lion unloaded, Winthrop therefore declared a colony-wide day of thanksgiving and prayer. He also hailed the arrival of young Williams, whom he called a godly minister. Williams, who had already developed a reputation for scholarship and piety in England, had brought his family to this wild for the same purpose as the Winthrop group. And Williams had left England even after word of woes in Massachusetts had for the moment dried up interest in emigration. Although, in truth, he had had little choice. English church authorities would likely have soon imprisoned him. The Boston church confirmed Winthrop's opinion of Williams by immediately offering him a post. It was the greatest such post in English America, and it held all the promise of the continent. Yet Williams declined it, and he did so indelicately, spurning the church as insufficiently committed to the proper worship of God. This astonishing charge had made for tense relations between him and the colony's leaders ever since. Now, 5 years later, the English settlement in Massachusetts had stabilized and begun to thrive. The planters no longer clung close by the rock and foam of the shore, but had moved inland, rooting themselves, clearing thick forest and plowing fields. New immigrants, nearly all of them sharing in the same vision as the old, continued to arrive with each ship. Meanwhile, the government and clergy had set the colony firmly upon the path Winthrop had laid out. Williams challenged both the government and the clergy. Had he been isolated, the authorities might have ignored him, might have left him to his own devices. But after something of an odyssey, he had been called to minister to the Salem church, where passionate followers supported him. His teachings resonated outside Salem as well. Nearly all other clergy in Massachusetts and most lay leaders believed he threatened the very vision that Winthrop had described. He threatened, they believed, the success of that city upon a hill. He threatened, they believed, God's vision. Williams didn't dispute with them on any point of theology. They shared the same faith, all worshiping the God of Calvin, all seeing God in every facet of life, and all seeing man's purpose as advancing the kingdom of God. But Winthrop and his colleagues in power in the Massachusetts Bay Colony had enormous disagreements with Williams over how to infuse human society with God's vision. The Bay's leaders, both lay and clergy, firmly believed that the state must enforce all of God's laws, and that to do so, the state had to prevent error in religion. This conviction they held fast to, for their souls and all the souls within the Massachusetts plantation depended upon it. Williams recognized that putting the state to that service required humans to interpret God's law. His views were not yet fully formed. How Massachusetts dealt with him would itself influence their formulation. But he believed that humans, being imperfect, would inevitably err in applying God's law. Hence, he concluded that a society built upon the principles that Massachusetts espoused could at best lead only to hypocrisy, for he believed that forced worship stinks in God's nostrils. At worst, it would lead to a foul corruption, not of the state, which was already corrupt, but of the church, as it befouled itself with the state's errors. His understandings were edging him toward a belief he would later call soul liberty. The authorities in the Bay believed that Williams had become dangerous, that his views could infect the entire colony and cause its descent into sin. To prevent that, the general